Hello and welcome to a special edition of Full Throttle. You've just got me today, and the producer will sort of like be with me in note form in the background. Hi there, Charlotte. But Brian is still sunning himself on a Greek island. So we thought what we would do for this episode is take a look at some of the big news articles that are impacting on the fantastic drivers of the UK. So without further ado, I've got it very, very much sort of old school style here today. There we go. It'll be like reading the news at 10 back in the day. So the first thing that's cropped up in the news, and this came by as a result of an investigation by the RAC Foundation, and it's found that in a single recent 12-month period, there has been around 18 occurrences every week of people driving onto the motorway in the wrong direction and then carrying on driving on the motorway in the wrong direction. Yep, you're driving in the wrong direction. Yeah. So this represents something like a 30% surge in previous figures. And the key causes of this appear to be driver impairment. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, obviously, things like alcohol, drugs, tiredness, and sometimes it could just be that they're an international driver that isn't used to the UK roads and has misunderstood where they should be. There's also some reported confusion regarding sat-nav. Now, I must admit, quite often when I'm traversing a roundabout, I will look at the sat-nav and it'll say exit at the next junction. And as you're approaching to exit, you realize it doesn't actually mean that one. It means the one after that. So I can understand kind of where people are going wrong there. So that's a potential hazard. And perhaps a little bit more dramatic, evading the police. Well, I can only imagine these are not such good people, not like you and I. And they have chosen to drive the wrong way. This isn't an error of judgment. This is an escape plan. So what's the expert recommendations regarding this? Well, to prevent these catastrophic head-on potential accidents, they're looking to reconfigure junctions. Well, that's the recommendation anyway. So updating the design and making it clearer as to what's an entry point and an exit point. I must admit, and you probably agree with me, sometimes when you are at a junction that goes on, from a slip road onto the motorway, it can be a little bit difficult to tell what's an on-ramp and what's an off-ramp. If you are, you may have been distracted, you may have been having a conversation with somebody in the car, who knows? But yeah, so they need to make that clearer. And also some warning sensors included in the road would be good. So that's something that they're potentially looking at. But above all, enhanced signage is probably what's required. But it's an interesting statistic. The fact that it's gone up that much, it hints at new factors. And I think one school of thought is that there's probably some people that have arrived here recently that have become road users and don't necessarily understand the way it works over here in the UK. So interesting anyway. This is an interesting one. We love this one. We've got a PR coming out soon, and that's Brian McDowell from the Alliance of British Drivers. One of my colleagues is currently knocking it into shape, and that'll be issued in the coming days. But this is this is a block of flats in the Reading area where we've got something like 600 apartments and amazingly 4 parking spaces. How does that work? So I would imagine that there's either going to be 4 people there that are paying an extortionate amount of money to have these 4 parking spaces. This is for illustrative purposes only. This isn't necessarily how it looks, but you get the idea. But I mean, that works out as a ratio of 0.0067 spaces per apartment. Now, if these spaces, say, for example, they are on a first come, first served basis, that's going to be an interesting scenario, isn't it? I would imagine, though, if there's only the 4 spaces, they will be allocated to certain apartments as part of that block. So this proposal, which has been submitted to Reading Borough Council, is outlining a virtually car-free lifestyle for future residents. And it's generated, I would imagine, more debate in the Reading area and beyond than was stated at the point of us finding this information. So the planning application targets Phase 3A of the major ongoing Station Hill transformation scheme, whatever that means. And the project area sits at the junction of Garrard Street and Greyfriars Road, and it will require the demolition of Zaffinity House, a 6-story vacant office building. So, yeah, out with the old and in with the new. So what do you think about that? I mean, this is definitely something where they're giving the thumbs down to drivers. You know, as a resident of any house or flat, you would expect to at least be able to park near your home. Even if you can't park directly by it, surely there's got to be somewhere where you can park your car. Absolutely crazy. 4 parking spaces across the entire 600 flat development. I'm just reading here that they are reserved for disabled blue badge holders. 2 spaces per building, and will feature electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Of course they will. So we're encouraging electric vehicle ownership, an agenda there. And also these are for disabled residents only. That is fair enough. But to have just 4 spaces across 2 buildings that make up 600 homes, absolutely crazy. But in a joyous move, there will be cycle spaces galore. 337 cycle spaces. Whoop-de-doo. So this is all about 15-minute living, which we've spoken about quite frequently on this show and certainly within our pages of Driving Sense magazine. This is where they're trying to encourage people to have such small lives that it's like going back to the dark ages, isn't it? It's ridiculous. Where's your freedom of movement gone? Out the window. So why is the community concerned about this? Well, naturally, people are going to want to park somewhere nearby. So the overflow into nearby streets, residents nearby are clearly already up in arms thinking, well, hang on, people are going to want to park even if there's no spaces available. So where are they going to park? They're going to park in our streets. Understandably, that's not going down too well. There'll be a strain on the infrastructure because if these people can't get about by car, then that means additional people using the public transport. So how is that going to work? And it also sets broader planning precedents. If this goes ahead and goes through, then where next? You know, is it going to be the same applied to another part of the country? Or is it going to be something else that happens somewhere else in Reading as well? It's not a very nice way to expect people to live, let's be honest. At the end of the day, we're used to mobility. We're used to getting about. We're used to the choice of going out, even if it's only at the weekend, taking a run out, going where you want to go, and this just stamps all over it. And I, for one, think it stinks. And I'm sure you do too. Well, that's Reading. And then over in Bristol, there is something called a ghost junction. And this is an unused £50 million motorway junction on the M49 that has failed to open to a single car since its completion. And it was intended to connect the M49 directly to the massive Western Approach distribution park, which is home to major hubs such as Amazon, Tesco and Lidl. And it is instead sat there as a multi-million pound dead end. It is the HS2 of junctions. It is a deceased junction. It no longer lives. The saga has drawn immense criticism from locals and politicians alike, who label the infrastructure breakdown as a complete farce. And it certainly is. There you go. There's the ghost junction. So National Highways finished building the physical roundabout and dual bridge junction. However, they left a 160-metre gap between the new junction and the local road network. So that link in itself has created a problem. There's then been a bitter dispute about who was responsible for building that short connecting road, and that's where the problem lies. So, who's responsible for adding that bit to that bit? Who knows? But it certainly isn't something that is happening quickly. And then, of course, there's been local fallout because the direct motorway link does not exist. Thousands of heavy goods vehicles must now navigate narrow roads through local villages to access these distribution parks. And as a result, those people are complaining, as would you and I. If you've got some HGV vehicle on a regular basis coming past your house, it's not very nice when you know that there's a road structure up the road that just hasn't been used properly. So that's what's going on in Bristol. Now, it's summertime, so you'll be thinking of going on your holidays, and Spain continues to be probably the #1 holiday destination for most people from the UK. If you go over to Spain, though, for your summer holidays, watch out because they have new speed-related cameras, and these are way, way more precise than what we currently have here in the UK. So they have what's called cascading and mini radars. These are tiny portable velo laser. That sounds cool. A velo laser radar. And these are being placed behind metal barriers and inside the Guardia civil vehicles. That's their place. And they're capable of capturing speeds up to 250 kilometers per hour and tracking vehicles from over a kilometer away. Right. So if you're over a kilometer away and you're being tracked by this, you're not going to know. You're not going to see it coming. So this is a warning to anybody that's planning on driving in Spain. Definitely adhere to the speed limit. Be aware of what the limit is and stick to it. Otherwise, you're going to get a very nasty surprise. They're going to be using what's called 4D LiDAR technology. So Spain has introduced LiDAR systems which are paired with real-time AI analysis, and the cameras can detect braking 200 meters before the device and automatically differentiate between cars, trucks, and motorcycles to apply relevant speed limits, because obviously some vehicles have different rules than others on certain roads. And the key locations for these, the major proportion of the new cameras was deployed on known accident black spots, which is what they tend to say happens in the UK as well, and also what's deemed to be dangerous stretches. These prominent areas include the Costa del Sol, such as the A7 in Malaga, Alicante, A31 and A7, as well as regions like Navarra, Madrid, and the Basque Country. So if you're going on holiday to Spain this year and you do hire a car, please be aware of this new technology that will be monitoring you. And like we say, sometimes from up to a kilometer away, which is insane technology. And as well as the speed cameras, Spain has decided to tighten up on other road rules that drivers should know. So the traditional leeway or grace period over the limit has been severely tightened. For fixed cameras, the margin is around ±3 kilometers an hour for speeds below 100 km/h, and roughly 3% for speeds above 100. And so in practice, there is actually little to no leeway. Low emission zones, so cities and populations over 50,000, are now strictly enforcing automatic number plate recognition and all sorts of things that are there to prevent you from getting about. And lastly, the V16 emergency beacons. These are traditional warning triangles that are no longer recognized. So the mandatory V16 flashing geolocated beacon is required for all vehicle breakdowns. So I remember going to France many years ago, and you have to have this kit. You have to have your triangle just in case you break down or there's any issues. The standard one is no longer acceptable. So you do need to have this flashing geolocated beacon. So make sure you've got the right kit with you. And speeding fines and payment. If you're caught by a new radar, speeding violations carry serious penalties. starting from around €100 for minor infractions and reaching up to €600 with license points deducted for severe excesses. So I don't know how that works, but apparently you will get points on your UK license for doing something naughty in Spain. So be careful out there, folks. For a long time now, speed awareness courses, see, we speeded onto this. Speed aware courses have been thought of by many people as either a money-making scam or some sort of extortion racket. It's a widespread sentiment amongst many motorists, and I'm sure some of you will agree with that sentiment. But apparently, this does not align with how the system is legally and financially structured. While high-profile media commentators frequently label a scheme a cynical extortion racket, the courses operate strictly under a cost recovery model regulated by the National Driver Offender Retraining Scheme. So why do we think of it as a racket? Well, it's the pay-to-comply dilemma, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're basically being asked to pay to waive the offence. So it's and what it can do, it can lead to your insurance premium going up as well. And these fees vary greatly from region to region. Course prices are not uniform, and they typically range between £79 and £100, depending on the local council or the private provider, such as TTC or DriveTech, which fuels suspicion of the commercial profit-seeking nature of such a course. And also, over the years, this has become a massive scale as well. Apparently, there was a record 2 million drivers completing road safety courses on an annual basis. And critics, such as ourselves at the Alliance of British Drivers, argue that the system is an industrialised cash cow rather than a targeted safety measure. It certainly feels that way. The official reality, where the money actually goes. Now, you would imagine that this money goes in to support our road structure, sorting out potholes, sorting out signage, sorting out anything that that sort of money would go towards to help the driver. Apparently, the money is broken down thus. So we've got administration costs, and that's a dynamic portion, goes to the local police force, solely to recover the administrative costs of processing the camera activation and the offence. Private contractors, which would part of that fee, would go to the independent road safety firms that employ the tutors and manage the logistics in the classroom, be it in person or online, and that's including such people as the aforementioned TTC and DriveTech. And the National Education Fund, around £45 of each fine goes to UKROED, the United Kingdom Road Offender Education Scheme, and that's a not-for-profit company that governs the curriculum. And these funds are legally ring-fenced and reinvested directly into national road safety initiatives and policing infrastructure. So it's going into road safety and to help the police. But surely the best thing to do would be for it to go into the road infrastructure to actually improve the surfaces that we're on and the conditions that we're driving in. Because I hazard a guess, sometimes people are having to make judgments because of the surface that they're on. I've certainly had situations where I suddenly had to swerve out of the way of a crater. It's not a pothole, a crater. And that's, that can create something rather dangerous. And the other thing as well is, do these courses actually work? Okay, confession time. I have been on 3 speed awareness courses, right, over the last 12 years or so. And the first time I went, the course was actually a lot longer back then as well. I seem to remember it being 4 or 5 hours long. They seem to operate around 2 to 3 hours now. And at my first course, I came away from it feeling like a changed man. Oh, I'm never going to be naughty again. And we all know what happens you're driving along, the speed of a road changes from either a relatively fast speed down to a slow, or vice versa, or you know the road so well that you know that the road around the corner is going to be 50 even though you're in a 30, and you think, well, I'm just going to start increasing. And each time I've been given a speeding fine, it's been based on 3 miles over 30, that kind of thing, 4 miles over 30. It's not exactly, I'm not Ayrton Senna. I've always found it very frustrating. Now, the courses, do they actually work? Well, the fact that I've been on 3, I guess not. You do tend to adjust your driving a little bit. And at the end of the day, I would say the majority of the people that take these courses do so because they don't end up with points on their license. It's an alternative to taking your 3 points. Now, if you've already got some points on your license, you may have 6, you may have 9 points, and you're thinking, well, if I get any more points, I'm pushing my luck here. I could lose my license. Then, if you're offered that course, you're going to do it. The reduced reoffending statistics for this are thus. So apparently a landmark Department for Transport study conducted by Ipsos Mori revealed that drivers who completed the speed awareness course were 23% less likely to speed again within the next 6 months. I'd say that's quite low anyway, but the fact that it's only over a 6-month time scale makes you think that beyond that 6 months, people revert to type. The long-term impact over a 3-year timetable course attendees remained 9% less likely to reoffend. So there you are, compared to those who simply accepted the points and the fine. It's an interesting one. It's up for debate, and it's the sort of thing that we like to look at from time to time at the Alliance of British Drivers. Are these courses just there to make money? Because obviously, the alternative of taking points, if you get offered a course, I would imagine that you breathe a sigh of relief and think, well, that's 3 hours I'm never going to get back, but at least it's not another 3 points on the license. So whilst they're a positive in some circumstances, they're still, on the whole, a racket. Here's an interesting one. The RAC has introduced the ability for you to have your car serviced at home. It's quite an interesting concept, and I'm surprised it's taken this long for it to come about. But it means that for people that are struggling to either get to a service, a garage to service their car, or for any work that needs doing on it, that they'll come to you. I would imagine they've been heavily inspired by the likes of Specsavers, who now do eye examinations in your own home. And this is good for disabled drivers, for people that are just very busy. If people work from home but they can't really afford to take the time out to go and drop their car off, and quite often these days, if you do take your car for a service to a garage, there's no offer of dropping you back at home. There's no, you're going to have to either get an Uber or a taxi to get you home. So there's an additional expense. And then you've got the additional expense of going back there again later to pick it up. So, I think this is a positive move. I would imagine other companies will follow suit, giving sort of all the sort of things that you would have from a normal service, be it an interim one or a full service, at your home or even at your place of work. That's the other suggestion, is that you could have somebody come along to your place of work, and providing they're okay with it at work, do the work on the work car park. So that's an interesting one. We'll see how that goes. But if you've taken the RAC up, or any other organisation, on that kind of offer, let us know, because I'd be intrigued to know how you're getting on with that sort of thing. So there's a gentleman working away on that young lady's vehicle at her home, and I think probably it's quite nice for both of them, really, that she hasn't had to go and find somewhere to take it. and this chap's been able to get away from the garage for a bit, see a bit of the world. But there you go. So that's the RAC doing mobile servicing. Another thing that we've been looking at is car insurance fraud. The crash for cash hotspots have been revealed. So some of the areas where this happens quite a lot. Barking and Dagenham has been revealed to be the UK's biggest hotspot for reports of motoring insurance fraud. And this comes from Tom Jarvis, who wrote about this in Auto Express. So the UK's motor insurance fraud hotspots have been revealed. A new study shines a light on which postcodes are most rife with the cases of so-called crash for cash and identity theft, following reports that almost £600 million worth of fraudulent motor insurance claims were made in 2024. This has been conducted by the UK's Insurance Fraud Bureau, the IFB, and the research project uncovered Barking and Dagenham as not only the biggest hotspot in England, but also in the UK as a whole for reports of insurance fraud. Crieff took the dishonourable top spot for Scotland, with Kenness Bay and Crumlin being the epicentres for motor insurance fraud in Wales and Northern Ireland, respectively. It's hard to ignore the prevalence of certain cities within the IFB's list. Birmingham appears quite often, and Bradford's there, as is Glasgow and Belfast. And all the big cities tend to have this issue. I remember a few years back, I had an incident where there was a car in front of me, and they were almost waiting until there was nobody else about before they started acting quite erratically. They would speed up, then they would slow down. It looked as if there were 4 people in the car, and they kept looking, and you could occasionally see them sort of jeering or laughing. I had no idea who they were. I couldn't tell you what they looked like. All I could see was the features where they were clearly messing about. Luckily, there were no real points during that journey where there weren't other vehicles either coming in the opposite direction or suddenly came behind. I think had there been just us two on the road, just the 2 vehicles, I think there would have been some slamming on of the anchors, causing me to effectively cause a driver error and go into the back of them. But interesting stats that these things are pretty much there countrywide, but with Barking and Dagenham not looking particularly good for England. One thing that has been noted is that road traffic has finally gone above pre-COVID levels, but the question is, will that last? With many people feeling these days that they're being forced off the road through either the pricing of vehicles or the cost of running them. And it doesn't help as well when the roads that you're driving on look more like some lunar landscape than what you would expect from an A road or a motorway. Drug driving was also highlighted in the report. Felt that that's reaching epidemic levels, with reoffending rates 5 times higher than drink driving. So that's interesting that that kind of situation is going on in the world. But that's the world we live in, folks. We have got people driving around on drugs causing mayhem. So again, be careful out there. A bit of good news. The UK government is poised to water down its zero-emission vehicle mandate and the ZEV, following intense lobbying from car manufacturers and automotive unions. There's been a number of car manufacturers that have turned around and said, look, people aren't buying these things. and you're basically going to cause these businesses that have been around many decades into administration. The ZEV mandate is something that has been highlighted, particularly since the start of the Labour government, but it was still about during the Conservative years. But the current Prime Minister, at point of recording, Keir Starmer, is preparing to consult on softening the annual EV sales targets. Under the current rules, manufacturers were mandated to hit a 33% EV sales mix in 2026. So for every 3 cars bought, one of them must be an EV. And they're looking at bringing this down. Oh, no, and that was to increase to 80% by 2030. Reports are suggesting the 2030 target could be radically reduced to 50%. I still say that's too high. At the end of the day, an electric vehicle should be down to choice. The way that you power your vehicle, if you are of mind that you feel that driving an EV car suits your ethical stance more than driving around in a traditional petrol or diesel vehicle, well, whoop-de-doo, you go ahead. But don't forget, you can't sit there all smug in your EV thinking that you're saving the planet when quite often, practically all the time, these vehicles are incredibly damaging at the manufacturing stage. Many of these coming from overseas where they haven't got the same net zero targets that we have here in the UK. And so to make these vehicles, you're having all sorts of rare earth materials, processes that include coal-fired power stations. So if you do decide to have an electric vehicle, do it because it suits you, because of the journeys that you take. Do it because you only potter around from home to the shops 2 or 3 times a week. If that suits you, then that's probably not a bad choice, if that's what you think. If you're doing it because you think you're being some sort of convert, oh, look at me, I'm so righteous, it's not the right way to go, because at the end of the day, the vehicle is as dirty as a standard vehicle. And at the end of the day, the science that we have seen here at the Alliance of British Drivers, this issue with CO2 is a farce. The amount that we produce in the UK is tiny. And if other countries aren't on board with this, and there's an article coming up later on in the show which will show that other countries are actually pumping out more CO2. So there is no point to us impoverishing ourselves. That is the point. We can be as virtuous as we like, but ultimately it's going to lead to nothing. So don't do it. The network milestones that have been reached recently in the United States, they've surpassed 250,000 charging hookups across level 1, level 2, and DC fast chargers. Now that sounds, oh, that's good, that's impressive. 250,000 charging hookups on a country of that size, that's not a lot, is it? Not a lot at all. The UK expansion has reached over 92,000 operational public charge points with ultra-rapid chargers, that's 150 kilowatts plus, seeing a 40% year-on-year increase. Great. I mean, if people are going to drive EVs, then they need the infrastructure there. But, again, I reiterate, EVs should be part of the mix. They should be a choice. They shouldn't be mandatory. Especially when we have got such a rich stock of oil off the North Sea that we should be drilling for. It beggars belief, it really does. So there you go. That's what's going on in terms of the ZEV or ZEV mandate. ZEV, good grief, I'm not American. Speeding points. This is an interesting one. Who would you imagine would be the demographic to be classed as a boy racer? Somebody that is racking up the speeding points on the UK roads. Now, if somebody asked me, I would think probably something between late teens and mid 20s. Inexperienced drivers, show offs, people that are just showing off to their mates. But oh no, no. It turns out that I fall well and truly in the age group that is deemed to be middle-aged drivers who are boy racers. So drivers aged 45 to 64 account for more than 40% of all speeding points handed out. And in the 45 to 54-year-old age group, which I'm just past that, makes up the largest single segment, with more than 270,000 motorists holding speeding points. Drivers aged 35 to 44 represent the next highest group. And in contrast, motorists aged 17 to 24, which is where I thought would be the biggest, receive only a tiny fraction, under 6% of all speeding points. I suppose you could put a lot of this down to the fact that youngsters these days, when they pass their test, whilst I think to some kids it still feels like a rite of passage. Certainly when I was in my teens and I took my driving test and got my first car, a rather interestingly coloured Talbot Horizon. It was zit yellow, that very pale, juicy yellow. Oh, it was a horrible car. But yeah, back then driving was a lot more accessible for a lot more people. Youngsters could pass the test, buy an old banger, get it out on the road, and there were no such thing back then as the tracking boxes, the data boxes that you have in cars. Certainly my two kids, who are now 23 and almost 26, they've both had those black boxes in their cars, which helps to hold down the insurance cost, but also it's a constant reminder that you need to stick within the speed limits and be more aware of the roads that you're traversing. So yeah, that probably does go some way to explain why the 17 to 24-year-olds make up just a tiny fraction of this. As for us oldens, slow it down. Yeah, you never know. It might be me that's in your way. But there you go. Boy racers. It's nice to be called a boy, isn't it? Right. Now, one of our former directors, Duncan White, who still has a lot to do with the Alliance of British Drivers, had a look into something that's happening over in the US. And this isn't being critical of the US in any way, shape, or form. It's not a political statement. But what it is that this net zero mandate that we've got is certainly something that Mr. Trump has no intention to go down that route. And they're about to start deep sea mining. Now, this deep sea mining, in a twist of irony, will be getting the rare earth elements, copper, manganese, cobalt, nickel, that sort of thing, from deep sea mines. Now, the issue with this from a net zero perspective is the amount of CO2 that it will push into the atmosphere will be significant. So, and again, that's not a criticism of the US, because like we say at the ABD, man-made carbon dioxide emissions aren't anywhere near as much as people would have you think. And even when that kind of level of CO2 is being pumped out, we've still got more pressing matters with natural occurrence of CO2, such as volcanic eruptions or cow's flatulence. Always a good one, the cow's flatulence. But the point that we're making here is that this deep sea mining needs to be done to protect the ability to have these elements that are needed in EV batteries, because at the moment the majority of EV batteries are produced in countries that, shall we say, are quite often on the radar as being not necessarily friends to the West. And that being the case, if we go down a route where we mandate EV as the future, say we get to 2030 and we get no more internal combustion engines and we only have electric vehicles, they really are holding all the cards over in countries other than the West. So, as a safety net, as a fail-safe, I think it's probably quite right that they've looked elsewhere for these materials, because who wants to be held to ransom and not be able to create vehicles if we go down that route? It's a puzzling one, and there's more questions than answers. The Northern Pacific seabed that stretches from Hawaii to Mexico, there are trillions of nodes, as they call them, and these contain the rare earths and other highly prized mineral deposits. And these have taken millions of years to evolve, long before humans existed, and have never been disturbed, leaving a pristine natural environment untouched for hundreds of millennia. So not only are we being forced into going to find these materials elsewhere, but in being virtuous, we are being less than virtuous to nature. So think again, folks. I mean, Duncan does conclude with this sentence: surely it is far easier to have proven fossil fuels and nuclear energy to run society, industry, transport, and commerce than create issues that needn't be created. Well said, Duncan. And that is just some of the things that are happening in the news for motorists across the UK and beyond. So if you've got a story that you would like us to cover, be it either on one of these broadcasts or within the pages of Driving Sense or through our social media channels, please get in touch. You can find us at abd.org.uk. Or you can also email me direct. As well as a director of the organisation, I'm also the communications director, as you see there on screen. And you can contact me direct through my business, which is paul@mediaandyou.co.uk. And just make sure you put in the title bar that it's ABD or Driving Sense related, and we'll follow it up. So thank you for joining me today. Hopefully Brian will be back soon. Hopefully he'll be nice and tanned, and who knows, my beard might have grown back by then as well, because this wasn't done on purpose. Be careful when you're trimming your beards, folks, because sometimes if you put your clip on, it comes off and you go, and then you have to take it all off. I don't know. Maybe if I'm going to be a boyish boy racer, it needs to stay off anyway. Anyway, see you soon. Paul Naylor, over and out. See you again.